I'm smiling. All right, streaming live. All right, here we are. It is halfway through June. We're almost into the second half of 2020.
Oh yeah, almost all the way through June.
So welcome to another episode of Raw Take for CEOs. Today's going to be fun. I'm excited. A few things. One, let's kind of look back a little bit. You know, June is kind of that time of the year where everyone's looking at updating their financials, their budget, right? Kind of seeing where they said they were going to be, where they ended up being, and hopefully being able to close that gap.
That's part of the annual strategy cycle, right? Making sure that you're looking back at what happened, what the next 6 months look like. What are the changes in your hiring plan? What do you need to do to deploy resources differently to make sure that you're trying to hit your targets?
Right, and it's been relatively a good year considering where we were coming from. You'll hear a lot of articles in the Wall Street Journal talking about inflation, but saying, hey, if we're looking at inflation, relatively speaking, let's not look at year-over-year comparison, but let's look at a two-year look back. But before we get into that, because we got some advice going into the second half of the year, this month is Customer Appreciation Month.
Yeah, here at GrowthLab, we made it all about customer appreciation.
Right. And last week we had one of our good customers, Matt Murray from Wide Whale. That was a good conversation. Even some of our customers have actually asked about Wide Whale. So excited to make those introductions. But customer appreciation is twofold, right? It's great to get customer feedback, capture that voice of the customer, back to my Six Sigma days. But I think it's more important to share it's less about sharing what customers are saying about us, but more about what are we going to do with that information. And over the last probably 6-8 months, we've made some changes internally to our departments.
Yeah, I mean, the customer feedback is great, but what you do with that is what makes a difference, right? And we've gotten the feedback over the last, just continually getting feedback. We made a big effort last week. We tried to call all of our customers, probably got about 25-30% of them on the phone across all of our team members, and to get their feedback, their raw take on how we're doing. And what are we going to do with that, right? How are we going to improve? How are we going to communicate back to the market? And part of today is we're going to give you some of that straight up feedback that we got.
Right. So the second part is our marketing team has created some fancy PowerPoint slides. We all love those decks, and we're going to actually share some of the commentary live. Obviously, we're not going to show I hope we're not showing people's names, but kind of sharing some of the feedback. I will tell you though, to jump the gun just a little bit, I was actually a little surprised. I was quite surprised. I thought that the feedback was going to be more negative, more critical, even some of the scoring. And maybe it's being, maybe a little hard on ourselves, because we are in a people business. As much as we try to talk about the cadence, the rigor, the technology, the team is still at the center of what service-based businesses, how they provide their service. And, imagine, I once had a mentor who said, imagine being the CEO of Starbucks, and you've got thousands and thousands of stores, not just in your own state or country, but throughout the world. And you're at the mercy of that one barista who can either provide the most amazing experience, the best, the standard product, right, that we all expect, or they can provide the product, but not with that level of customer success, customer service, customer enchantment. You're at the mercy of hundreds of thousands of employees servicing millions of customers every day.
Totally. And
that's scary shit
for a
CEO.
Yeah. The product can be a one-to-one replacement, right? I mean, Starbucks went through it when they were kind of standardizing their machines, making them easier to use, right? They were on a one-to-one comparison on a product basis, and I'll probably get complaints about this, but with McDonald's, right? And then it was all about the experience, right? It's working at Starbucks. you want to greet people within 10 seconds of them walking in the door, right? That's part of like the whole training for baristas.
Yeah. And so with that, one of the things we've been doing internally too, on a different note, is we're actually making more investments into our marketing production. We've empowered our marketing team to go out there, spend more money, get more of the latest equipment. So this thing that's kind of protruding through the wall here in our face is a microphone. This will be interesting. I'm not sure how this is going to work when we have live
events,
live audience. Right?
No, one of the things we know about the podcast is that our audio needs some improvement. So give us feedback. Give us your raw take. How are we doing? How does it sound? Because we know that some of the sound quality has needed some improvement. So we're working on it.
Cool. So on to the intro here. 6 months into 2021, I actually almost there for a second said 2022, coming off a very difficult year. 12, 13 months ago, I don't think most of us didn't really expect to be where we are at. The first half of the year there's a lot of successes. Customer demand, consumer demand, business demand is coming back. It's the same old story every time I go and put together these quarterly bank meetings, or in your case, investor reports,
board meetings.
It comes down to we have a brewery who actually just started with us, and I've actually used this quote from him a few times. It's like 4th of July every weekend for this brewery, right? And so it's obvious that customer demand is back. People are pumped. People have been pricked, and now they're ready to get out there and
be back, right?
Be back.
I mean, as challenging as the last 14 months have been, we are seeing businesses. It's kind of the dichotomy, right? Those that navigated it and kept their business foundation and are able to come back, and those that aren't, because we are seeing some businesses shut down indefinitely, shut down for good. But if you have been able to survive and keep your foundation, in general, the story out there is that business is coming back.
Business is back. However, now we're also beginning to see another dichotomy, and now it's less about the consumer, the customer demand, and it's more about the ability for businesses to actually service their customers, get the product to customer shelves or in the customer installations, render those services. It's actually becoming more difficult, whether it's because of inflationary pressures. And I'm actually more focused on the indirect inflationary pressures, because the reality is we've actually seen a lot of customers being able to push some of the inflation on raw materials and labor over to customers. Customers are willing to pay for it. One, pent-up demand, and two, 12 months of savings, right? We really haven't, the savings rate has like blown through the roof. So people are willing to absorb the shock of increased prices. It's the shortage of pricing. And so the first 6 months of the year, it felt pretty good. Revenue's up, customers are coming back. Yes, supply chain constraints. We've all been able to work with it, having a little bit of extra liquidity thanks to the CARES Act and the PPP money, and even the ERTC, which we're going to touch on a little bit today. There's been extra liquidity to maybe bulk up on inventory, maybe pay employees a little bit extra, or even if you're hiring, you're throwing a couple of $250 Amazon cards at your new employees for just showing up for an interview, or maybe hanging around for at least 2 weeks.
And/or strengthen your balance sheet.
And/or strengthen your balance sheet. Now, with all that said, we are starting to see this shift. Will the consumer stay when you see lumber prices hitting all-time highs, and then within a 6-week span plummet by 50-60%? Even housing, you're starting to see a slowdown. There's still housing shortage. There's some signs there that this quick burst of growth on the customer demand is probably going to subdue a bit. And so with that, our advice is, as we're going into the second half of the year, is focusing on 3 things. Do you want to start off with the first one, Steve?
Yeah, it's focusing kind of on that infrastructure of your business, right? Making sure that you're focused on accounting, a clean set of books, making sure that you're not going to get behind in just making sure that you think you have your financial house in order, right? You've been able to clean up your balance sheet, you've been able to get some free money, get some PPP,
Get some growth.
Make sure that you like have all that documented, because the last thing you want here is to get 3 months down the road, 6 months down the road, and need that and have a crap show.
So let's use the summer to get back to basics, in other words. And number two for us is, the banks really haven't been out there lending money. Right?
It hasn't been needed, right?
It hasn't
We were
been
just
needed.
talking to this morning.
And so as you're looking at the second half of the year, contemplating whether or not this growth is sustainable, this growth is going to continue, or this growth is going to maybe accelerate, what a great time to begin to reopen those conversations that you started, say, 12 months ago with your bankers. Let's start thinking about refinancing. You probably have plenty of liquidity, or you've been able to use that liquidity to get through the doldrums of the economic shutdown. But now is a good time to maybe take a look at some of those loans and think about decreasing your debt service costs.
Yeah,
and refinancing.
And bankers are eager for that, right? They're coming out of like being overworked
Heads
by
down
PPP stuff, but they want to deploy their own capital, right? Not the SBA's capital. They want to deploy their own capital and build new relationships.
Right. And so the third one is sometimes the best place to look for growth and sustainability is where?
Is to maintain what you have.
Maintain what you have.
Customer retention.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier, a lot more cost effective to retain a customer than to get a new customer.
Which is why I outside of the fact that Matt is a customer, I really enjoyed last week's conversation because it was really about customer retention, customer enchantment, having your finger on the pulse of like, what does the customer really feel about you? And I think that's a great place to focus. Think about those companies where you install product at a customer site, or you already provide a sliver of what you can provide to a customer. What better way and more cost-effective customer acquisition strategy than asking your own customer, trying to upsell, upgrade your customer? So those are the three things. Focus on the foundation to start thinking about refinancing that balance sheet for 2022, and 3, customer retention. And so that brings us to June, Customer Appreciation Month.
So like looking into, our feedback from customers, we want to share some of that directly with you. But the purpose of that for us, what are we going to do? Because we want to retain those customers. We want to enchant those customers. We want to make sure that their experience here is a positive one. And we've invested in the last 12 months, in 8 months, in customer success, building out that department here, and we've even talked about it in terms of the journey of growth of companies. You've got those early stage issues, challenges. When you get to a certain point, you as a founder, you as a CEO, cannot wear all the hats, and you need to outsource that to one of your, not outsource, insource, but to one of your employees. And one of the key areas is that customer success, whether that's through an account manager, whether that's through a dedicated department of people that are trying to focus on enchanting that customer or being a resource. One of the things we heard 6 months ago was as we diversified our service offerings, there's too many people to talk to. I talked to one person for FP&A, one person for CFO, one person for tax, and one person for accounting. Okay, I mean, those are the people that know the most about each of those individual things. But if you want one person to talk to, here, this is your customer success department. They are charged with making sure that we are providing a unified service to our customers.
Good. So this is a great transition point. Let's share our deck that we have here. I'm going to take a quick pause here while Steve brings this up.
So for those of you joining us on the podcast, we'll walk through verbally with you. For those joining us live, you can even read it yourself.
Good. And so as we're going into this, one of the things we also do want to, but feel free to go ahead and change the slide. So going along with the second half of the 2021 themes, one of the things we want to touch on is the ERTC. The ERTC has actually, I would say, especially since January or February, ever since the PPP loan 2 became,
accessible. You can use both the PPP and the ERTC, right?
And so the ERTC has become top of mind for us and our financial analysts and our accountants. as we're looking at and reviewing the second half of our customers' books, we're beginning to get a picture of the performance in Q1 and Q2 in 2021 versus the performance in Q1, Q2 in 2019, which is the baseline that you have to go off of, at least for the 2021 eligibility of the ERTC. And we're finding a lot of customers, as great as growth has been. It did take many customers, especially in the hospitality industry, that extra 3 months, right? It kind of into Q2, coming out of March, coming out of April, things are obviously on the upswing for many of the hospitality markets. And so the ERTC is becoming an interesting play for companies looking for additional liquidity. So ERTC, it's a great opportunity, but you got to be cognizant of a few things, Steve.
Yeah, it's a great opportunity. You now can have both the PPP and utilize the ERTC. There's no application process, etc. All you need to do, quote, is to refile a 941 with your payroll company or with your whoever is filing your 941s. But the key is, Dan, is you can't, as you know, double dip between the PPP and the ERTC. So it all depends on payroll, but the ERTC is by quarter. The PPP obviously is by your covered period. And for every $100 that you pay somebody, you cannot use 100 of that to get forgiveness on the PPP and that same 100 to get a credit on the ERTC.
So it requires a little bit of optimization.
And for most companies, there is optimization to be had, right? Get the PPP for government first, but focus on getting your non-payroll, maximizing your non-payroll side rather than just the payroll in PPP forgiveness, and use all the other available dollars for the ERTC.
Right. So if anything, the number one piece of advice here is do not apply for PPP to forgiveness. Unfortunately, many of us have already applied for PPP1 forgiveness, so it's a little too late to figure out the ERTC qualifications or accessibility in 2020, although it's not too late yet. You're gonna have to do a few amendments and all that jazz, but at least right now, don't apply for the forgiveness until the dust settles on Q1 and Q2, because you can always straddle out the PPP loan forgiveness because it's on a time series versus quarterly. So I think that's, if there's a one key takeaway, don't jump the gun. And then two, if you do apply and you do, actually qualify, don't expect it to happen overnight. You're not going to just like from one day to the next get a check in the mail, right? It does take a 6 to 8 week process, especially if you're with some of the national payroll providers. If you're doing it yourself, well, good luck, because that 941X is going to take a while to filter through the system. And so there are 3 things for second half of 2021. And now I don't think I've seen all of these. And so here we are. So let's kind of walk through the columns here so the audience understands what these columns signify.
Yeah, so we asked several questions for any of our customers that our team connected with. We asked them to give us a score, and we asked for their direct feedback, and brought all that together. What we've got here is.
And what is the score?
The score on there's a rating of 1 to 10. How do you feel like we're doing?
Okay.
And we had a few.
I thought it was the NPS actually. I thought it was on a scale of 1 to 10. Would you refer us to a friend or a colleague? And so with an NPS score, Steve, the goal here, of course, is the 9 and the 10, right?
Yeah, 8 and above are your net promoters.
Mm-hmm.
Anything below that is either neutral or detractor.
Detractor, right? Good. So as we kind of run through some of this feedback, let's kind of poke around and see what we're thinking, what our customers are thinking here.
Yeah, what we're looking at is we've got a column with the industry that the customer's in, the score that they gave us, and their direct feedback.
Mm-hmm. And so I'm going to kind of bounce to the revenue acceleration taxes. More advanced warning for deadlines. Felt like they were always pinging to see deadlines and what documents they needed. Overall, very good job on taxes and getting the signature file. So it seems like, hey, why you guys manage our accounting, right? So why are the tax department pinging me, the customer, when you guys have the numbers? That is in like, if there's one major issue in our company, It is intra-departmental, intra-function communication. Within the function, we're pretty damn good, right? If it's FP&A, you and I are usually involved at a higher level or deep into certain full service customers. We're meeting with the FP&A team on a daily basis for at least 30 minutes. But it's when the accounting team and the FP&A team are involved in a particular customer. That doesn't always happen because we're not meeting, right?
We're not co-located.
We're not co-located at times.
We're sometimes asking the customer the same question. We get that feedback. And what are we doing to try to deal with this, right? Is, we are we have upgraded our workflow system so that we can see visibility across customers, across departments, what communication is happening. Now, that still means that the teams need to go and seek that out before asking the question. And, we won't probably be 100% on that. We probably will ask the same questions, but the key is that we have that ability, and the teams are working to coordinate across functions with those customers that are utilizing us across accounting, FP&A, tax, CFO.
So this isn't something new, having visibility into a team member and customer communication, but it's something that we've sort of shied away from, right? That big brother feel, right? We never wanted our team members to feel like we were prying into, not that it's privacy, because it is company content. It's critical to the success of our company, critical to the success of our customer. What do you say to team members that say, hey, this kind of feels like Big Brother?
Well, some of it is Big Brother, but the system is set up so I'm not tracking every email that you're sending. If you send something to your mom, I can't see it. But when you send it to a customer that I have in the system, and I've got that marked as an FP&A customer and a accounting customer, the FP&A team and the accounting team can both see that email.
Good. And so I'm going to actually tell the audience what the workflow system is. So a big shout out to Ian's team, Carbon HQ.
With a K. Carbon
with a K. And it's been years in the making. We knew we needed something more robust. It is one thing to have standard operating procedures, from sort of collecting of documents to closing of the books, but it's another thing to see how do you manage and track that more concierge service, which is what we wanted to be, right? Back in the day, if you had asked us, even like 3 years ago, most of our team members essentially had a calendar, and Monday through Friday, and you would see, okay, I'm going to work on this customer on Monday from 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock, and then from 10:30 to 1 o'clock, I'm going to work on that customer. Well, the issue there became customers. Yes, accounting calendars are important. And by the way, if you Google accounting calendar, GrowthLab is number one on Google. Accounting calendars are important, right? Because one of the premises that we have built our business based on is cadence, right? Cadence, and then rigor. We don't start with a team. It can't be just about the team. It's got to be about the timing, right? When we do what we do.
Yeah, and I look at this piece of feedback. Felt like they were always pinging me about deadlines, right? It comes back to cadence, rigor, and team, right? Where we probably fell short here is cadence. Cadence and rigor, right? And we made up for that by the team pinging the customer for deadlines, or maybe the cadence was there and something fell off, whether it's a meeting that the customer had or something fell off, and we needed the team to step in and make up for that to ultimately get things done on time, done well. But that experience was not as beautiful as it could be.
And so we've made that investment into a little bit of demystifying the intra team and customer and department type of communication. So, but it's not all bad news, right? Like I said, I was actually quite surprised when I look at NPS scores. I actually see quite a few 8s, 9s, and 10s. So, let's just jump to the home services one. So we have an NPS of 10. And what did this customer say?
They're West Coast based. They would like us to have a West Coast office, ease of hours difference in East Coast and West Coast time.
And so we are. So I'm not going to say that we have been thoughtful in this. Maybe it was a little bit pushed. We were pushed into this, but we are making that move, right? We do have.
We're moving west.
We're moving west. We do have an employee out in Colorado. We do see an opportunity. Just because the world went virtual for 12 months, it doesn't take away from the fact that, having proximity to your market, maybe not all your customers, but to the market is important. I'm not sure we're going to be making a major footprint expansion. I do believe that we can still continue to leverage technology and to leverage the team to be more flexible around working hours. And the team actually appreciates that. Let's face it, there are people that prefer to just stroll into work at 10 o'clock and leave at 8 o'clock. Not everybody's like an early riser like you, getting up at 4:30 to be in the office by 6. Cool. So now let's take a look at another one, Steve.
I think the one we got rated on a 7 on the NPS score. Let's look at that. That was from a nonprofit. They said, as a nonprofit, specific needs that we have, we'd like more experience with their help. Might be a little typo in there. Communication can be an issue. Who are we supposed to talk to? And that's something we have heard a few times, and in the feedback. Who are we supposed to talk to? And it's a good question. We have the way that we're set up for our audience is, for an individual service item like accounting, you usually have at least 2 people touching your account. One is more the controller type, the team lead, and one is more the staff accountant. And those people both communicate with the customer, and sometimes the customer doesn't know what the role is. Add on to that they're an accounting customer and an FP&A customer. You have 4 people that you can potentially reach out to. We do not try to limit our customers and through one person. We want to give them access, but at times that does seem overwhelming to customers, and we need to rein that in.
Yeah, that's again, it goes back to the team. In this particular situation, nonprofits are very unique. How you do grant accounting is unique compared to sort of straight up cash accounting. And then, of course, with requisitions and all the rest, there's a lot of tribal knowledge that ends up happening. And so I go back to this the 3 pillars, right? Cadence, rigor, and then team. It's really about tightening up the standard operating procedures, right? When are we doing? What are we doing for this customer? But yeah, this customer is 100%, spot on. As team members change, and by the way, we have very low retention, relatively speaking, in this business. It is not uncommon for accounting CPA shops, not that we're comparing ourselves to them, but to have 30% turnover. Not here. We probably lost one individual in the last. Not probably. We only lost one individual out of 20 something employees. That's not bad.
We have good employee retention.
We have really good
something I take I say pride in, because it means that we do have higher than average, we'll call it culture, overall experience as an employee.
But I will say, to that, we've been fortunate to have a low employee attrition. But it's also because, we're also very focused on maximizing gross margins. And so there's got to be a balance, and achieving world-class gross margins in a service-based business to the tune of 60 to 65% does stretch the bench. And so when you do lose a critical team member, well, let's face it, at 66%, everybody is critical, right? You lose that one person, you do the math, everything kind of goes out of whack, and you are going to drop the ball. There is going to be some breakdown in the quality of service and continuity in the service. So something we are working on, and something that we have. So the solution here for us has been, we have brought on Jen, we've brought on Jeff to run the whole accounting team. And so we've bulked up, and now we have plenty of capacity that we could probably grow the accounting business to the tune of 20% and not really have to go out and hire. And that's important, because it's a bit of a hedge, especially in this world of indirect inflationary pressures, aka employees can just go find another job elsewhere. And then and of course, as the economy continues to expand, we want to be able to capture that growth. So yeah. I'd be curious to see the next slide, unless you have another one you want to pop into here.
Yeah, I just popped over to the second slide about customer feedback, same layout, just more customers, more feedback that we've gotten. One from a relatively new customer. who's only a bookkeeping and accounting customer, noted that they're moving from one bookkeeper to another, to GrowthLab, and everything's been good. They'd be happy for more communication. Didn't really know what was going on during some of the months of the transition, and hear that loud and clear. One of the things that we often do with new accounting customers is kind of that cleanup phase, right? So after those initial conversations, here's what we're going to do. And all honesty, we just lost a customer because we just kind of went into heads down mode. Let's get it done. And we'll come back to you, customer, when we're wrapping up or when we have questions, right? And the customers don't want that, right? They want that they want to be able to quote log in and see what the status is.
They want to be brought along,
right? And that's something that we have heard in a few ways in the last 3 months.
Yeah, and if I can add something to that, we used to bring customers along more so in the past when we were more focused on an hourly billable revenue model, like 5-6 years ago. But as we have pretty much moved like 90% of our revenue being fixed pricing, whether it's recurring monthly fixed pricing or project fixed pricing. And yes, sometimes we take it in the chin on the gross margin. But for us, it's always been like, hey, if I want to have a conversation with a customer, I don't want it to be about like why you owe me, 10 hours worth of work versus the 5 hours I told you, because so we used to bring customers along more. And I think what we've taken for granted is as we've gone to this more fixed price approach, we said, well, the customer's really not paying for whether we're spending 5 hours or 20 hours. They're going to pay the same. So why bring the customer along?
Yeah, and I think it's less about why, but do they care as much, right?
I guess they do.
The value is in getting the deliverable, but yes, the feedback is yes, they do.
And it goes back to what's the solution here? It is that customer success function, and that customer success function is threefold. Yes, it's about coddling the customer, but it's about paving the path, explaining to the customer, this is what you should expect. Based on the scope of the engagement, here are next steps. Here's what the final product is. And by the way, more importantly, here's the GrowthLab teams, aka people also within the teams that are going to be servicing the customer. So let's bounce to another one.
Let's see. Another one was more meetings, more follow-up, kind of the same lines of thinking, right? Like keep bringing me along, make sure that I know what's going on. One said no change, performance great. So it's not all we're kind of focused on the negative, the ones that we can.
One said Stephen is stretched. I don't know about that, Steve. All right, forget it. And then let's jump to the one, the NPS the company that gave us a 7. Which 7 is I don't think it's neutral. I think it's a detractor. But anyways, the turnover that we experienced in November and December. So the turnover was not really November and December. It was more in January, February, where we lost a key member of our accounting team. Again, we're in it was the middle of COVID. The transition did not go as well as it should have. There's still some mistakes. And that's a tough one, right?
Yeah, it's a tough one. In part, the customer is very involved, right? We're working very tightly with that customer. They're doing the invoicing, and so it is a hard one to transition. And we knew that going in.
Yeah.
And so I do not want it to be a rough transition, but I'm not too surprised. One of the things that we've, if he had all the resources in the world, we'd improve the processes, improve the systems so that you wouldn't have as many kind of custom ways to go about dealing.
Yeah,
with
if we could tighten them up.
That's no excuse. It's just it's more like a knew that one was going to be hard.
Yeah, a lot of different systems. Yeah, that one was a tough one, and I think I don't know what else to add there. So let's take a look at one more. So how about the 6? That's a big detractor there, folks. It's a law office.
It's a 6 on the NPS score. Have a lot of trouble with QBO, QuickBooks Online. Had a training with our GrowthLab team, but still don't know what we're doing. We didn't get any support in that area and need more help. We need more touch points.
Yeah, that's a tough one because you're going from an entrenched general ledger system that this company has had for years, for probably 15 years, which we were servicing on site, and trying to transition this customer. This was even pre-pandemic, I believe, transitioning this customer to QuickBooks Online and to boot, transitioning to a virtual team.
You know, it might have been right before the pandemic, but I think it still happened right. Basically, they made the transition as that was happening because they knew they were not going to be having our people sit in their office and be able to work on their on-premise systems. And that one, again, when we don't have fully cloud-based systems and the teams are not fully trained on those systems, it's ungreased wheels, right?
Agreed. Yeah. And so I want to take a look at the retail who gave us a 7 out of 10. The feedback was, well, we're a bookkeeping customer. We'd like to see increased cadence and more regularly scheduled meetings. Now, that's a good one because in the service-based business, and when you are trying to provide fixed pricing to a particular customer that can really only afford X amount, it's a little bit of that square peg round hole. And here's a great example where the engagement agreement that we have with this customer may not actually fully embrace what this customer wants. It's just a question of, can the customer afford more? And I don't actually know who this customer is, but that is something that we, I would say, have been working on for easily 5 years. And about 3 weeks ago, we had friends of ours, Practice Ignition, and Practice Ignition is our engagement agreement management system, plus our cash collections system. And that system, and maybe it wasn't the system, but the system enabled us or forced us to truly think about the scoping of engagement agreements, because it's just too easy to go to a customer and say, hey, the material costs me $1,000. I'm going to increase the price of that from $1,000 to $1,100, and my installation fees are going to be $100 an hour. And all in all, at the end of the day, you get a $2,500 bill, and you're like, wait a minute, I thought the product only cost me $1,100 and the installation. Right? It's too easy to do that. It's a lot more difficult to go and spend the time to discover, spend the time to design, and then actually nail it. In other words, be able to buy the product, the material, the raw material, hit the right gross margins, plus your cost of labor to install or to service. So even from like a manufacturing perspective, that's hard to do. Imagine here.
Yeah, and I think just to articulate that, because it is something even the last week that we addressed, especially as we grow our services, right? So in PI, we are much more specific about what we're doing for accounting, right? What does that mean for us, right? Because early days when we were moving customers from hourly engagements, when we acquired the bookkeeping business, which was all hourly, a lot of it on site, we were moving those customers from that to fixed price packages, and we didn't do it overnight. I think we had empathy with the customer, but going from hourly, which is you only pay for what you consume, to fixed price, we really needed to, as you said, define what it is, right? Because when we say we're going to do your bookkeeping, period, for $750 a month, customers just say, okay, you do my bookkeeping. And we kind of struggled with, bookkeeping, it means something different to you than it does to the next customer, that does to the next customer, and then it does to me. So we really need to define what it is that's in there, right? Because then we have a customer that is FP&A, tax, and accounting. They don't have anybody else, right? We are their full service finance as a service company, but each of those kind of services has a box, and they're a bit capped, right? They're early stage company. We can't do everything for that price, right? So how do we make sure that the customer realizes that when they're asking for things that are above that threshold, so that we can still give the customer that feedback, let them know, we're not doing this for this reason, but still it doesn't give the customer a bad experience, right? That's a challenge.
Yeah, it's a challenge. And I think the way you solve for that is customer success functions, where you're taking the difficult decisions of, the customer wants a little bit of extra service, aka scope creep. Do I give it? Do I not give it? oh, the customer thinks we're too expensive. Do we give a discount? Right. Disconnecting the conversation, like I cut my teeth in sales my first two years in after college, and my boss used to say, I never want you, the salesperson, to be collecting money. Why? Because you want to uncouple the two, because bringing that conversation together, those two topics under one conversation, it just creates a very difficult, challenging, and potentially impedes that sort of customer journey. And so having that customer success role, making sure that this is what the scope of the work was, here's the price. If you want to increase the scope of the work, then here's the increased price. I think that is a function in every company that is usually handled by the owners, right? And let's face it, we've had to have those conversations. It's not pretty, it's not fun, especially when we're passionate about what we do. It makes it even more difficult, and we're passionate about the team. We try to protect our team, but at the end of the day, that is a conversation, a challenge, a process that it really is a process, and it needs to be handled by its own function in the company. So I'll leave it at that.
Let's do one more.
Yeah, let's do one more.
Last one on the list, they gave us an 8 out of 10 on the NPS score. But why I like this one is, I would like it to be a 9 or a 10. But their comment was, we did have some hiccups in the transition. There were some things that needed some extra attention. At the time, they said, I would have given you maybe a 2 or a 5, somewhere in the 2 to 5 range out of 10. But right now, I'm super satisfied. I'm going to give you an 8. So I think that was a win, and that some of the investments that we have done, work with the customers. This is a little bit of a success story in getting a customer from those challenging times of like onboarding and back and forth, figuring things out to a place where they're on a good cadence, rigor, and team.
No, and I remember that one. He reached out to me personally and said, "This is what's happening," and I said, "Okay," even though it was not something I was going to send over to customer success. Just wanted to work through the team, and what ended up happening was again, it's a people business. You had a misalignment of expectations. So, no, this is good. And what else do we have? One more. Let's take a look at one more. So, okay, counterfeit protection rated as a 9, no change. Well, that's a good sign. But let's take a look at internet rating of a 9. So in the beginning, not a big deal, something that explained each vertical and who the contact is for each of these items. For example, tax, CFO, accounting, FP&A. It's the same old story. So fortunately, he starts by saying in the beginning. Hopefully we've improved on delineating who the teams are, who leads the teams, and then more importantly, what is the service level and who's going to be providing that service to the customer. So this is good. This is obviously our own experiment. It's one thing to, it's one thing people say, it's important to be vulnerable. It's important to be transparent, but it's another thing to actually do it. And so I hear from our customers all the time, I love your style because you're explaining things through your own lens, through your own experiences. And to me, that's important because I do believe that is part of our DNA, being real. And so if this isn't real, I don't know what the hell is being real.
So there you have it. You have all raw take of straight from our customers' mouths to your ears. And we want our customer experience to be a fantastic one. And we are working every day to chip away at the feedback we're getting so that we can make that customer experience.
Yes. It's never going to be what you want to hear, but it is at least we want the experience, the feedback, the output may not be what you want to hear, but the process needs to be beautiful. The process needs to be engaging because we always say in our sales pitches, we're only as good as you are, the customer, right? If you're not part of the process, if you're missing meetings, you're not doing the pre-reads, you're not doing we're not here giving you pages of homework, right? But there are times where I need you to be prepared for this meeting. So it is about the process. This week was kind of cool. I'm going to switch topics for just a second. So last week we had, or 2 weeks ago, we had our entire FP&A team, which is awesome. Last week we had our newest member of the FP&A team, Riley Hunt. He joined us as one of our junior financial analysts, which is exciting, and continue building out that bench and bringing this young talent, analytical. They love this stuff. And this week we had almost the entire accounting team here in the office. So this office was jammed yesterday, which is finally feels good. We actually had to call the building property manager and be like, I think we need an extra 5 parking spots today. So
yeah, it was a different feeling.
Yeah, it was for sure. Felt good. So anyways, that's our raw take. That's us being vulnerable. And second half 2021. So right around the corner this week, tomorrow, I believe, we're on Clubhouse with our friends from Giraffe talking about
demythifying
planning for startups. So we're going to be in the Clubhouse startup room at 5 o'clock. Be there, be square. Cool. Thanks,
Awesome.
Steve.